cíneach go bhfuil na micrófónan ach a bhé agus an dá chuide Teams agus na fónaigh an live. Má se bheith céisteach is an idir hengacha agus go bhfuil se bhar son bliain chuide ar micrófón éid mustáisiigh sin iormí a cháirlaige nús muidestan treabhracha le fach golúirnaí.
Lord our God, as we continue the business of this day, Lord, we thank you for your tender mercies to us as we stand on mercy's ground on this new day. We thank you for all your goodness to us. We thank you for all that we get from you, Lord. But most of all, Lord, that we can come before you knowing that you are the one who rules. And as we do gather together this day, Lord, as a committee of this council, to discuss the connectivity of air, road and sea, we thank you, Lord, that we are able to do so for the good of this community as a whole. Pray, Lord, to be humble in thy presence, that we would ask you for guidance at all times as we continue on this road, on this journey of life, a journey that takes us this day a day step closer to eternity. And we know, Lord, that we do not know what a day or an hour may bring, but that we could put trust and confidence in you, Lord. You know us personally, you know our thoughts, you know our words, you know our actions. So therefore, Lord, we know that we are in your hand. You are the Alpha, you are the Omega, you are the first and you are the last. Our circumstances change daily, Lord. We must confess that even at the start of a day, we do not know what the day will bring. We do not know what the next day will bring, or the week ahead, or the month ahead, or even the year ahead. But all that is in your hands, Lord. We ask that you would bless each one of us in all our circumstances. Many differing circumstances that we bring before you. We remember the sick and the suffering, and we remember our colleagues, Councillor MacLean and Councillor McKeever at this time, Lord, and we thank you for your mercies and surgery, that they are able to, that has been fulfilled, and that they continue in recovery. Maybe those who are waiting anxiously for tests and results of tests, Lord, the bereaved, those who are in difficult circumstances, many circumstances, Lord, that we come before you, that confront us on a day-to-day basis. Oh Lord, we pray for this committee this day then, Lord. We thank you for the chair, for his diligence over many years, Lord. The work, the faithful work that he does to support this committee. We remember all the officers that prepare the reports, from the Chief Executive right down, Lord, through this council. Every member of the council, everyone present, members in our homes and our families. And we ask now that you continue with us, that you continue to do us good. Go before us in the rest of this day, Lord, and pardon us freely for our many sins.
Tapel den is. Chonju nes ka klarig. An de dain wie stuurde in de konju goeie na lennis na Urkine. Maar hij schreef naar buiten komen die uit de vierlucht computer. Vaak over kamera uit microfoon ja. Maar hij afgekeken naar vierlucht computer vaak over ja en daar goed. Maar ilse wat die aansknoof fikkers kist. Goeie een geine boeil uit afgekeken gewel system feus en jammer. As mag ik garig in de mics. Hij maakt hier dingen a feu a boilske goeie uit bij een goor goeie in de stad. En hoe je liks een garige stui maak, aardig je maak uit jarak. Ga weer daar maak jarak, ik aimse bij. Maar als je weer zo'n tilke kist vaak over maak eet, als me ha afgekeken bij in die aas, goordigen uit en daar roet en nu roet en het piavages a horst de wiel a commenty. En dat dan weer klaar uit, veel met boeilen jammer ook hier goede deestig op voor een weelschef. Ik kusper een schia zeg gegaarlijk dit ik ne konju. Als behoort de afgekeken, behoort de wiel a commenty als na afgekeken immer gevoelig. Als hier in is nog compaar stellen a konju akal. When kutjach nach Queen, gewel a goede wat je klaar, als bij het larig Comhairle, als je na konju. Goosjes in eske keer hundersen, het husper keer hunders na konju, hoogela die ik de nog via staan wiele kook, die het als de schenner staan undige. Wil je ook undige? Dag below. Dalla cwsper ger hwndas cwnio bwyn lwch wy asiac yn eisiau gael eis ha nyn y wa diag hanog fi ystafio lys cod ceriffig eiched sa sienderson fisrachag. Agus am eich da hwyrstach yw siaid eist, ti mich al eis na drygan y born man hwn yn chifs 3. Son goleif siwlag na drygan na horn. Horag a sien gwrs fi mwyn gallar agus a tor. Chistyn o leib siawg nach dwy ffigwrs doia. Siarad gyma cwt yma chan siar yn ei chwlet eide leifag an y dynach na cystig dyn ys byd gwyd as. Eis yn colfewnach gwyd eich yn yr aach. Fe ga ffewmal na gentach siwyd i diest. Horag e gyma trygal se gyma cwt yma chwyd. Siw tig sy'n? Ema? Nes cwsper y 3 clar y wy. Mae ha wy ag bwyl an y gwsper sy'n byd y chlar upfrwch bwchor gaif sy'n y chlar. Fe ga ffewmal yn eisiau bwyl yn dawr e fel at y clar y ws y chwsper. Fy'n ysbyd y clar y wy, fainig?
Mis na wel gan y bwyl na can noch sians gol sgalpai. Ti'n lost yn lad o'r siach.
Ai, ema. Fy'n ysbyd la. Chanel ha cwsper y cyd ha sy'n y ffag gol gwtedig na cwnio hoer na bwyl a tîn hat chafiad y siog o diwy teich i wyl mwysren ha fag sy'n chen gwtedig na cwnio sy'n nes go cwsper y cwg as gyn has di hyn a sy'n nes o'n ffisrach Eva Het sy'n y nes yn y diafar gobech gachyd cwsper yn sia agos sech bwchor dy fwyl o chomedi agos na hoffig edrych ymwch i ffwydiach agos Okay, everybody, Martin, good morning and yeast. I am going to do this session in English, seeing none of our guests have Garlic or though David at the end, I believe, is doing his best to learn. Yes, yeah. So I'll introduce them. David Hamill, Calmac, Graham Hyatt, Calmac, Lewis Hamill, Seamal, Andrew Hannigan, Seamal, and Paul Linnett, McCaskill, Transport Scotland. So I think Lewis in the middle here will do most of the presenting, and I think you're in charge of the presentation as well, aren't you, Lewis? Yeah. Okay, Colm, you want to say a few words first?
Thanks. I'd just like to thank our colleagues in coming in person here to share where we are with the small vessel replacement programme. We have a project team going, including most of the people here on the table and others, looking at the practicalities of replacing small vessels, primarily on the Sound of Barra and the Sound of Harris. After we have the update on the vessel replacement, we'll have a short discussion as well on fixed links, because as we're looking at small vessel replacement, there's always a long-term option and a long-term view. And there's been some discussion in this chamber over various years on where are we with considering fixed links. So we can have a discussion then on where we are just now with fixed links and what the future plans are to look at them in more detail. So again, cheers. Thank you for taking this item.
Okay, Lewis, if you put your light on. Right, fire ahead.
All good. Hi everyone. Thanks very much for having us along. And as Eilean said, my name's Lewis Hamill. I'm a technical manager at Seamal and with the vessels team, and I'm involved in a number of the new build projects that we have going on. The Little Minge vessels, the Eilean vessels that we have out in Turkey, as well as the small vessel replacement programme, both phase 1 and phase 2. So today, to give you a bit of an update, I've got a few slides just on the Little Minge vessels because I think it'd be very worthwhile for everyone to just get the latest on that, and then mainly focusing on the small vessels phase 2, and we're happy to obviously take questions on that. The slides, they are quite detailed. There is quite a few of them. I'm not going to go through every single detail, but we're more than happy for these to be shared with all the members after the meeting. So if I do skip past stuff, please don't be worried. I will mainly focus on what we're looking at in terms of the capacities and like so the vessel design, and obviously what we're considering at the moment for number of vessels, timetables, etc. And again, we're not finished yet. We've still got another few months in this process, so the kind of next steps that we'll be looking to do, and also the public engagement events which we've been carrying out over the past week, and obviously still got a few more events to do. Hopefully this works okay. Yep, okay. So first of all, just the Little Minch vessels. Apologies, I do have a video on this. I'm not sure if it's going to work because I'd converted this to PDF, but this pretty much covers where we're at with the 4 vessels in Turkey. 2 for Islay, of course, the Isle of Islay and the Loch and Doll. The image in the bottom left shows all 4 ships just prior to the launch of the Lochmore, which is the first vessel for the Little Minch. So this was just taken at the end of August. And then the second image you can see there is the Lochmore, so the first Little Minch vessel entering the water. So we currently, as it stands, have 3 boats in the water. It's pretty something, to be honest, to be seeing 4 ships like that. Obviously, there's no hiding it that things have taken a little longer than we'd hoped, but we certainly are getting in. As you can see with the 4 ships, particularly the first 2, they are at a very obviously advanced stage. For Isle of Islay delivery, so the first vessel there, we are looking in the next 1 to 2 months. Sea trials, the final sea trials, the sea acceptance trials should be happening within the next week. And then from that, we'll obviously have a kind of bit more clarity on the delivery of that vessel. That delivery is then impacting the other 3, where we see them at 6 months gaps from each other. What's been really useful for the 2 Little Minch vessels, for the Lochmore and the Claymore, being on the slipway, they've had the opportunity to be at an advanced outfitting stage. So it's not that they've just been sitting in the slipway and nothing's been happening. There's inside, in terms of piping, cabling, they're at a very good state. So when we get them obviously in the water, that outfitting stage in the water should be reduced. So as I say, at this moment in time, 6 month gap deliveries between them. That might come down, but at the moment there's no change. And hopefully we do need to give our own update to the government's NZEC committee at the end of this month. But likewise, we're happy to give any further updates on the vessel deliveries. As I say, the video, I don't think it's going to work in the PDF, but happy to show when there's a recess, happy to show the video to anyone that might be interested. It just gives a wee overview of the 4 vessels and the launch of Lochmore. Moving on to the small vessel replacement programme. So I'm sure most people are now aware of everything that's going on. I have given an update previously in there, not a presentation, but the small vessel is quite a big replacement programme where we're looking to replace up to 10 vessels over 2 phases. So this started with 7 vessels in phase 1, and then we're saying 3 vessels at the moment in phase 2. I would say that's up to 3 vessels because we still have to have the funding agreed for it, but certainly the goal is for 3 vessels. The key drivers for this programme, of course, is vessel replacement due to the age of the vessels, particularly in phase 1 where the vessels are approaching 40 and 50 years old. On the phase 2 for Sound of Barra, Sound of Harris, we're almost at 30 years for the Eilean and the Loch Brugda. Portion slightly younger, but again, by the time this all comes into realisation, the portion will be pushing 30 years as well. But another key driver for this programme is emissions reduction. Everything we're doing now, whether it be small vessels, major vessels, we have to be looking at emission reduction. And that's optimising hulls, it's looking at efficient propulsion options, it's looking at efficient modern machinery options, likes of batteries, which I'll come on to talk about in a wee minute. And certainly on the phase 1 element, which I've got a wee update here. So this is 7 standardised vessels. We have 2 design variants from the same vessel, which is an A and a B, but basically the hull itself is the same, the machinery spaces are the same, the wheelhouse are the same. All that changes between the 2 variants is the design B is a slightly larger passenger accommodation, slightly wider to accommodate more passengers, primarily for Iona Finnefort, just off Mull. And it then, of course, has a smaller car deck in turn. So we awarded a contract to Remontova in March to build these 7 ships, and these will be all electric. They will have diesel backup. There are 2 diesel generators on the ship as well, but they are backup rather than being used every day. And as you can see in there, 5.75 megawatt hours of batteries, which is quite a large battery installation, particularly for a small vessel that's only 50 metres. that would allow the vessel to operate all day, particularly on the more demanding routes that we have in the phase 1 routes, such as Collintrive, Robodoc, Eilean, Finnefort, Largs, Cumbria. The vessel will be capable of operating all day on batteries. But should we have any challenges with shore power or the vessel not charging during the night for whatever reason, we've got the 2 generators that can allow the vessel to operate without being charged. In terms of, like some cargo deadweight, obviously some of the phase 1 routes, it is a big requirement. Much more key requirement up here, particularly in the Sound of Harris route, and that's where we're then looking into evolving this design for the 2 routes up here. For the phase 1, the vessel 1 delivery is scheduled for summer 2027, and the final 7th vessel is scheduled for Q1 2029. So it's not a long time between 7 vessels, or at 3 to 4 month gaps. And you can kind of be the first to know this, but the steel cutting of the first vessel will be happening today. So I turned down being in Poland to be here, so hopefully. Moving on to phase 2 and the background. So maybe some people have seen this because it was some of the information we presented at the previous public engagement events that we carried out in January. We did commence the work in kind of late 2024, which was very much information gathering. Ourselves and the consultants we're working with in the Value, who we worked with on the phase 1 designs, visited the 2 routes and spent a lot of time with the crew on board. Following that, we carried out some public engagement events. In the background, CalMac have been working on the forecast demand. And as you can see from this table here, for the 2 routes, we have obviously what the current car capacity and current passenger capacity is. And in the green boxes, you can see what the required capacities are to meet the forecast demand. For Sound of Barra, a minimum of 29 PCUs, which is an uplift of what we currently have. And then as you can see for Sound of Harris, it's probably no surprise there that the current 34 PCUs, again, this is on what's on the kind of CalMac booking system, but there's quite an uplift there in what's required for the forecast demand, with it being 45 PCUs. So trying to achieve that 45 PCUs with a small vessel is challenging. We'll show you some of the plans that we currently have in development and how we're trying to increase that as much as we can. And then the other options we're looking at in terms of, a 2 vessel service, etc. One thing here is to note is the passenger capacity. So the log portion in particular was originally designed with a larger passenger capacity, but currently operates with approximately 150. So we don't see any issues with 150 passenger capacity in both of these routes. And again, from the public engagement we've carried out thus far, there's been no real concern over that. I should mention there is a 3rd route that's kind of still involved within phase 2, which is Mallow-Armadale. However, it is likely that will move out of this project because the requirements for that vessel are way beyond what we would class as a small vessel. And so that's more likely to become its own project. So we have been looking at a number of items, particularly for Sound of Harris, to see how best to accommodate this 45 PCU capacity, so various vessel designs. Also, we're looking at the port infrastructure along with the council, because obviously if we did have a 2nd vessel, we need somewhere to tie it up, which we currently don't have. And then we're not quite at that stage yet, but we will be looking at the timetable requirements to meet this demand. For the design challenges, as you can probably imagine, there is quite a few design challenges that kind of limit us here. If we start with Sound of Barra, limitations on the overnight berth at Barra do limit the kind of length of the vessel. There are limitations in the vessel draft, particularly on the Eriskay side. However, we do believe that dredging would allow us to realise our deeper draft that we have on the phase 1 designs. And then, of course, on the Burnley-Leverbury route, again, overnight berth length is a particular issue. It's currently at the maximum size for the log portion, so anything above 50 metres would mean work required there. Again, some draft issues in terms of at the ports, which again can be sorted with dredging. And then there's, of course, the route itself, which is, I'm sure everyone is aware of how shallow it is and the tidal restrictions we have there. So we'll come on to that in a wee second. We do have 2 routes here. We do have 2 vessels, but the log portion is the main vessel design that we're looking at now. Rightly or wrongly, it is a great carrier for the size of the vessel. However, it is very inefficient. And I think I touched on this at the last meeting that we joined, that as you can see there, the log portion alone accounts for 30% of the fuel bill for the small vessels in the CalMac fleet, and that's out of 16 vessels, so that's a huge portion. basically the log portion with its design draft, with the propulsion concept that it has with these pump jet units, which are not really for main propulsion either, they're more of a thruster for manoeuvring. It leads it to being quite an inefficient vessel. And as I touched on at the start, emission reduction, fuel energy consumption is a huge part of this that we have to be looking into. Touching on the port infrastructure, as I say, we're currently looking at this with the council for all 4 ports, which the council own, and looking at the route of Sound of Harris as well. We know already that we would have to carry out dredging works at 3 out of the 4 ports, which we'll be looking to get kind of cost analysis for in the coming months. And then as well, with looking at low emission technologies and batteries, we would obviously be looking at shore power as well. So we have already got quotes from SSEN for all 4 ports, and we have accepted an offer for Ardmore already, in line with the phase 1 requirements. And that just gives us that extra option that if the phase 1 vessel ever needed to be deployed on that route, then it would be capable of doing so. We will then be looking at what we call cable management systems or charging devices. This is basically to relieve the crew of lifting heavy cables. So we're looking at putting in these for our major vessels, but also for the small vessels in the phase 1 ports. And we'll be looking to have commonality with that for phase 2 as well. And then we will come on to talk about the 2 vessel service a wee bit more, but we are still looking at that and the options. It is challenging. There are a number of things affecting a 2 vessel service. As I say, infrastructure is one of the key ones, particularly a 2 vessel service where we could start with one on the Bernary side and one on the Leverburgh side, because the infrastructure would need to be upgraded at Leverburgh quite significantly. There is other options available that we're considering, such as tying vessels up to 2 vessels up on the Bernary side or on the North Uist side, and looking at different options. So again, hopefully we can go back in a couple of months and give an update on where we're at with that. But certainly 2 vessel service is not off the cards, and certainly something we're looking at. But aside from that, regardless of a 2 vessel service, what we're trying to optimise here is how 1 vessel can manage the demand as best as possible, because even during the winter, 2 vessels might not always be available because of dry docks, etc. Moving on to, I'll just skip by this. This is just some of the vessel and service requirements, which again, feel free to kind of read through. It just gives you a bit of an extensive list of everything that's considered during these concept design studies. So you can see from the boxes quite a lot. I'd rather get through to the good stuff. So I did probably touch on this at the last update we gave, but we have carried out bathymetric surveys for all 4 ports, and we also carried out a bathymetric survey for the Sound of Harris itself. So that's the image you can see there, where we basically followed the vessel's route that it currently takes, and we surveyed 150 metres either side of that route, which is the coloured track that you can see here. Now, all the different colours equate to a different water depth, with the kind of reds and yellows being the more shallower, the blues and the purples being the deeper parts. Looking at this in discussions we've already had with CalMac, MCA, who have the overall authority of the route, and then NLB, Northern Lighthouse Board, who they're responsible for all the buoyage and aids to navigation on the route. We do believe that we can tweak the route to avoid some of the shallow areas that the vessel currently goes through. So that's what we're currently exploring just now, mainly with NLB first of all, because it means moving some buoys and some aids to navigation and putting some additional ones. With that then allows a deeper draft to be realised on the vessel and to have it more in line with the phase 1, which would be 2.1 metres operational draft. So it is quite an increase, but with this route being tweaked, we believe that is feasible. So again, as I say, that is currently discussions ongoing. Also something to be considered, I'm sure that someone's going to ask the question, obviously the nighttime restrictions that we have on this route, with the additional aids to navigation, we can't say for certain that would lift these restrictions at night time, but it's certainly something that we'll be discussing with MCA to see what impact that can have. And again, with additional aids, let's hope that can give us more scope in increasing the timetable. But again, that is very much work in progress and is subject to approval from MCA. Just we touched on the log portion, and I won't spend too long on this, but these pump jet units, which you can see here with the vessel in dock, as I say, they aren't the most efficient. They give a lot of benefits for the log portion, given obviously the design, such a shallow draft, given the waters that we've been operating in. but they aren't really recommended in modern vessel design. They are more of a thruster, as I say, due to their inefficiencies, and even the supplier themselves, Chattel, would say that in a modern vessel you wouldn't be looking for these for your main propulsion. Another thing to factor in here is that the vessel also currently does 10 knots, and the difference between 9 knots and 10 knots from this vessel is quite significant. So again, not saying we're trying to reduce the speed in any way, but we are looking at the optimal speed that we can achieve for the timetable, obviously without reducing the number of return sailings in a day for one vessel, because we wouldn't be wanting to do that. Okay, moving on to just where we're at with the vessel design process. So although we've done all that work for phase one, we like to do our due diligence and go back to the beginning and look at the various options and make sure that what we are designing for these routes is optimised. And that's by starting with the hull form. So we've looked at 3 different hull types, which is a single-ended monohull, a double-ended monohull, which most of the small fleet already are, and then a single-ended catamaran. Apologies, the hull form images are the wrong way around. Sorry, the bottom there. I'll update that. Then in the middle there, you can see some high-level arrangements of the 3 options, and then the kind of very, very brief profile of each design. We then look into a whole lot of items, which ranges from, of course, the vehicle capacity and the passenger capacity, but then likes of windage, the energy demand, the station holding capability, the course keeping, moment to change trim, which is basically when we're at the slipway, the sea keeping characteristics, and then added resistance in seaways. So comparing these 3, all 3 offer a minimum of 32 PCUs, but depending on the final arrangement of passenger and crew accommodation, we do believe that could potentially be more. We wouldn't, with a vessel this size of 50, maximum 50 metres, there's no way we'd get more than 4 HGVs on the vessel. You would basically be going into a major vessel before you're getting more on that. For example, the new Lotte design I think is 7, so for this, to get 4 in this size of vessel is very good. And again, the passenger capacity is set at 150, as we said. As you can see from the boxes, this is very high level. There's also a lot of science that goes behind this, but you can see the double-ended monohull provides the most benefits with all of these areas, particularly in the key areas like energy demand and consumption, windage, station holding capability, sea keeping characteristics. The moment to change trim, of course, important, and the added resistance in sea was important, but I would say given the kind of other key requirements, the one area that it does kind of lose out in compared to, say, a single ender is course keeping, naturally, because for a single ender you have a conventional bow on the ship where you don't have that. But when you look at this, there is a reason why we already have double enders for all our small vessel fleet. Of course, turnaround times as well at ports would be much less, which is not included there, because you're just in and out, whereas for a single ender you would have to be turning the vessel. So our preferred way forward is a double ender, and our next stages, which we're currently looking at, is how it is all arranged in terms of the vehicle deck, the passenger accommodation and the crew accommodation. So we have another design, what's called Design C, which was developed for the Highland Council's Corran ferry replacement. So we've been working with them mainly alongside phase 1. However, the build of this vessel is most likely to be built alongside these vessels for phase 2. So it could be a potential 4th vessel. The Design C, which you can see here on the right hand side, has a similar concept to the phase 1 designs, where the passenger accommodation is on the car deck, and then you have 4 lanes. So what you see in the Design C, there is 32 cars, but it is an absolute maximum of 32 cars. There is space for 4 HGVs as well. And this design really complements the routes where, particularly in the phase 1, where you've only got 10, 15, 20 minutes of a crossing, you don't really have time for people to be getting up to kind of accommodation up high. Again, there is some benefits, I would say, of not having a passenger lift here, in the sense that it's probably no secret that it is a bit of an issue in the lock portion and can be broken down quite a lot. So the main accommodation is on the vehicle deck. On the left-hand side is the current development of the other option we're looking at for the phase 2, which basically has the accommodation up high. Now, unlike the log portion where all the accommodation is kind of over the car deck, you would have these 2, if you can make it out in the middle, these 2 larger or wider car lanes, which are mainly for freight. and other wider vehicles such as, dare I say it, camper vans. And then with your two side lanes are mainly cars. Now, the accommodation would sit above those car lanes, so that obviously would impact height. So it would be limited to cars rather than any like vans or camper vans. And even maybe kind of larger vehicles with roof boxes would still have to go in the middle. With the accommodation, of course, being up high on this, it would have to have a passenger lift for modern accessibility requirements. So that then does introduce, obviously, a bit of more of an added complication. However, we are going to maybe look at other options where there might be an accessible lounge on the car deck. However, that is sacrificing vehicle deck space. The current image you see there on the bottom shows 34 cars. So it is slightly higher, just slightly higher than the phase 1 design C, if you like. But as you can see, the two middle lanes are wider, so there might be the scope to increase that beyond the 34 into something bigger. So we've carried out public events in Barra and Eriskay, and it's a bit mixed. And obviously we're still to do the events here tonight in Harris, and then in North Hughes tomorrow night. And obviously we might expect a different opinion, but certainly from what we've got from Barra and Eriskay is the kind of more design C type is preferred for the Sound of Barra route. However, I'm fully expecting that probably for Sound of Harris, there might be more leaning towards the left-hand side. So that's currently where we're at, and both of these designs are being developed further. And what we plan to do is do a further public engagement event either towards the end of the year or just early in the new year. We will be then basically presenting what our preferred option is, the advantages and the disadvantages of both, which we have touched on mainly here, but there will be some more to be fleshed out for that. What the Design C and the Phase 1 vessel designs don't show at the moment is the full compliance with a Ro-Ro ship, because they're classed as vehicle carrying ferries. The two routes here are what we call Euro B, which is our most stringent route classification in the CalMac fleet. So at this moment in time, they show the design on the left shows like a fast rescue boat, which is more in line with the rescue boats that you see in the major vessels, and things like a helicopter landing winch area, and a few other requirements related to firefighting, which we don't have on the Phase 1 design. So we will also be having those discussions with MCA, which then kind of impact the space on the vessel. Just to finish up, and then again, we're happy to give some further updates and answer questions, but just on the funding and the planning dates for Phase 2. So we're currently doing the public engagement events this month, and we'll then be looking to complete the concept design and feasibility studies by the end of this year. We are penciling in the third events for January. If we can try and do that before Christmas, we might look at that, but most likely be January. And then we need to put this all together in a business case to submit to Transport Scotland and the Scottish Government. And we'll be looking to get a funding decision in the first half of next year, and then a procurement commencement of Q2. So again, still first half of next year. Based upon kind of current timescales, procurement of these vessels, an open procurement exercise, we cannot do it in less than 9 months. Just with the two-stage procurement process that we go through, we need to allow 3 months for stage 1 and 6 months for stage 2. So that is an absolute minimum, and even that is tight on time. So that if we did get ahead with procurement in Q2 2026, that would mean a shipyard being appointed before the end of Q1 2027. So basically 2 years behind Phase 1. This wouldn't then be directly coming after Phase 1, it'd almost be running alongside Phase 1. We do see these vessels a 24-month design and build contract for the first vessel, and that's not to say that the vessel necessarily takes 24 months to build. It's more about lead times for modern equipment like the generators, batteries, propulsors, and we're seeing that with the vessels we're currently building in Remontova. You're about a year to 18 months in waiting on these pieces of equipment. So that would take vessel deliveries through to kind of early 2029, and then kind of with a 4 to 6 month gap between them, kind of takes us into early 2030 for the vessels. So that's currently where we're at. And the Phase 2 of the SVRP is within the Phase 2 of the Vessels and Ports Plan as part of the Islands Connectivity Plan. So the funding is looking to be made available in that 2026 to 2031 period. And then that's pretty much it for the presentation. As I say, we're happy to give some further updates on any other items relating to this and any other questions you might have for us.
Okay, Kirsten, questions, anybody? Benjach, Kenneth?
Thanks very much, Eushan. Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. And it's good to see that things are progressing. Probably not as fast as we would want, certainly from my point of view as one of the councillors for Harris and one of those who has been pushing for the only option really for the Sound of Harris is a 2-vessel. Anything less than that is going back 50 years. Even with the possibility, and it's still only a small possibility of an increase in the day, the economy of the Western Isles is being restricted by the length of that day there. Businesses from Uist can't really economically go for contracts and work in Lewis and Harris because of the cost of having to overnight here. And similarly for Lewis and Harris businesses going down to Uist, it's the same thing. 2 vessels operating, starting, if they're 2 identical vessels, starting from opposite sides, there will be no issues with timetabling, with making sure they don't meet anywhere other than in the middle, which is probably the most bit of water you've got there. So 2 identical vessels, which was what we highlighted before, and I was pleased to see that that's now being considered. But I think it shouldn't just be considered; it should be the primary option, because it's not just about providing a ferry. This is about the economy of the Western Isles, opening the islands out. You speak about the islands connectivity plan. These are lifeline services, and it's vital that these become, the reality becomes 2 vessels on that run. I think the 2 smaller vessels and having 3 vessels identical covering the Sound of Harris and the Sound of Barra is the most sensible way, because you've got resilience, you've got built in there, and certainly in the winter when you can go down probably to 1 vessel for part of the time to allow for refits and that, you've got built-in cover there. I think that has to be the main option going forward. And I'm pleased to see that you have started talking to the council about Leverborough. Leverborough, we know, has to be improved. That has to be it. The Loch Porston is very expensive the way it's running, and I was horrified to see that you were even considering berthing both vessels in Bernera, because 2 vessels, both starting from Bernera, is an even greater retrograde step than having just 1 big vessel, because until we get the length of day and they can operate during day and night, then 2 vessels both leaving from Bernera is not going to have any benefit for, and certainly in the winter when your effective daylight hours here are between 9 and 3. Now, it takes an hour to cross, that's 10 o'clock. Do some work back there for 2 o'clock to be back there. In fact, 1 o'clock is probably your last. So you're looking at 2 hours, 3 hours maximum on either side in the winter. We need that length of day. Our businesses need it, our economy needs it, and certainly people travelling to the hospital need it. And I think on that, I've got here lessons learned from recent issues. The lift on the Loch Porston broke down there and caused lots of problems, not just for access for passengers, but also restricted the day because the crew couldn't have the rest hours because passengers with accessibility problems had to use down there. So having all the accommodation on the 1 level has got to be something that's going to be seriously considered. We've got lots of people travelling from Uist to come up to the hospital here, and many of them will have accessibility issues. And that's why the importance of having the accommodation at 1 level reduces that, and also reduces the likelihood of breakdowns. Why are we putting something in that is an issue and carrying on having that same issue in the time? We know there's an issue with it. It's a known thing in the maritime industry, and it's an issue that happens there. So why are we going to build boats with more lifts in them when we know they're going to break down? So I suppose what I'm asking is a guarantee that you're going to give us 2 vessels on the Sound of Harris, and that the focus will be on, the main priority will be on identical vessels. We've learned it with the Little Minch. I'm really pleased to see that. And at long last, we've got 4 vessels that can be moved around easier, because whenever there's a cancellation, we're losing huge numbers of people to the islands who are visitors who are coming here who, vessels cancelled, ferries cancelled, we've got your booking in 5 days' time. Well, if you're coming for 7 nights and you're spending 5 of them having to get extra accommodation, those people are gone.
Yeah.
And it's not just gone for them, that has a knock-on effect. So we need to be able to have a system where, and this is probably more at Transport Scotland and CMAL than CalMac, is that there have to be replacement vessels ready there. We don't know what Chips 3 is giving us yet, certainly not giving us any hope of any improvement until we know that there is a provision for ready backup. If a vessel breaks down at CMAL, are able to provide CalMac immediately with another vessel to cover to ensure that service runs, because otherwise CalMac can give us all the promises they want, but obviously they can't deliver because CMAL aren't delivering the vessels because Transport Scotland don't deliver it. Anyway, I'll stop at that.
Can you leave your light on,
Yes.
Kenneth, in case you want to come back? I don't know if you want to answer that
it.
initially, Lewis. One or two reasonable asks in there that you can agree to.
Just 1, 2
I
ferries.
can't give you any guarantees, but we will say that we're definitely trying our hardest with it, and hopefully we come back to talk to you again that we can give you more an update on that. But certainly from your point on the standardisation, and that is absolutely the goal here, is that 3 identical vessels would be the goal. Also, we've got the 7 standardised vessels for phase 1. Obviously, that's slight design variant, but it doesn't really matter because everything is the same. We would be looking to have commonality, standardisation between these vessels and the phase 1 vessels. So that for CalMac, moving crew around the vessels, whether it's engineers, skippers, if they're going into a wheelhouse, the controls are the same. We've got the same propulsors, we've got the same generators, we've got the same batteries, these types of things. So that's absolutely our goal for that as well.
You want to come back on anything, Kenneth?
Not just, as I say, it's probably a broken record in this chamber, that the number of times we're saying things and Edinburgh doesn't seem to be listening. We had the same yesterday with the HPMAs on that side, and that for 10 years we've been saying one thing and we've been regularly being ignored. We're talking of issues that affect the very sustainability and existence of our communities, and the answers have to come from within our communities, not from people sitting in Edinburgh who don't have a full understanding of what the reality of even one missed ferry does. It may be, let alone the regular problems we've had, the connectivity, the issues without, the challenges economically, and certainly for hospital transport and all of that. All these things are issues that are major for us, and as I say, the islands need to be listened to, and it's solutions that work for the islands, not that work easily for Edinburgh and for politicians down there.
You want Paul?
Yes.
Can you put your light off, Councillor McNeill? I do have you next, so in case you're worried, I might miss you.
And yes.
Can you put it off as well? Then
Yep.
it was nice. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And all those points are noted, and it's with regret, obviously, that those sentiments have basically been conveyed in the chamber, just regarding the fact that you do not feel that you are being listened to, basically as councillors maybe, and maybe as a collective as well. We're endeavouring to do our best, basically, in the fact that we're bringing in new vessels into the fleet. There's a recognition that things haven't been perfect in the past, and there's some way to go, basically. But the new vessels which are coming in, the major vessels, the new SVRP vessels, phase 1, and then in the fullness of time, phase 2, we're trying to address those balances. And I also note the points about the next Chiefs contract, that we are
putting steps and initiatives in place in that with CalMac to improve the levels of service basically to the island communities, to businesses, and to those who actually regularly use the actual connections. And obviously there will be community engagement and council-led engagement as well to ensure that where there is a possibility to improve and enhance, that we listen to those views and we try and basically act on those basically going forward.
Thanks. Yeah, just my last comment to you, don't worry.
Yeah, that's right. It will be your last comment.
For the small vessels, for the new vessels in the Minch, they're not a get out of jail free card for all the years of ignoring us. They're coming about 20 years late, but anyway, we'll leave that as it is. I am disappointed that in your discussions with Chipsley and CalMac, there's been no mention of the most important part of our ferry service is the vessels themselves. So if CMAL aren't being held to the same account as CalMac, then what's the point of Chips 3? Because if the organisation or the company, I'm not sure what CMAL are, in my view, there should be a department within CalMac providing the vessels to run the service so that the one organisation is held to the standard and to the contract that they have agreed. Without that, unless CMAL are also held to the same terms and conditions and contract that CalMac are on, Chips 3 is a waste of time. And I'll finish at that.
You want back in, Paul? Yeah.
Yes, thanks. And during the kind of there has been some work basically commenced on the organisational reform with CalMac and CMAL and how things are basically going to look like in the future, how those organisations interact with each other, and then obviously Transport Scotland as well on behalf of Scottish ministers. And that work is ongoing because it was felt that the prerequisite was to get the contract in before the expiry of the current contract, the direct award obviously to CalMac, and get the structures in place for that to actually occur, and then the work on any reforms of the organisation, the tripartite organisations which you've mentioned, that's basically set to follow as well. So it will be looked at, and I hear the frustration basically that is coming across, and of course I will speak to my colleagues back in Edinburgh and back in Glasgow, and obviously we'll provide ministers with feedback as well. So those points will actually be taken back, and then on the kind of vessel side, obviously, as with this project, we're looking as kind of joint organisations, Transport Scotland, CalMac and CMAL, at the fleet as a whole, holistically how it all fits together. There is the potential, obviously, for a resilience vessel, which has been discussed and has been highlighted through the Vessels and Ports Plan, which is on our website, which is part of the Islands Connectivity Plan, which sets the kind of roadmap for the fleet enhancements and fleet replacements over the coming years. So that is something which is also being actively looked at, as is the cascades and the disposables of current vessels as well, because obviously that's an important step as well to ensure that if vessels have adequate life and they are operationally valid to continue serving, that they are utilised in the best possible manner possible. But obviously we seek the expert views of CMAL as the asset owner, and then as well of CalMac as the operator, because they have the expertise on the ground with their very capable and competent masters and crew actually operating the vessels. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor McNeill and then Councillor McLean.
Thank you for...
Can you speak into the mic, please? One or two of the members are getting slightly deaf, so... Yeah.
Okay. Is that better? Thank you for coming to see us and for the presentation. You mentioned that your public feedback of events in Baranese, that you got a mixed response. Could you expand on that? And unfortunately, I was unable to attend since it clashed with us been up here and whatever. And on the Barra side, I'm aware of possible difficulties with the electrical grid supply. What are you going to do to resolve these problems? Because I believe they take a lot of power to recharge batteries and all that. I'm not. Okay.
Can you keep your light on, please?
Okay, that's
You'll
no
have a
bother.
guest councillor McNeill is from Barra, Lewis.
Okay, didn't press that button again, sorry. Yeah, good. Thanks very much for the question. So in terms of the feedback from the public engagement, not so much that it was probably kind of convoluted with both Barra and Erisgate. I think it was more what we're expecting probably to hear tonight and tomorrow from the sound of Harris. It was probably surprisingly, the main feedback was the two kind of options we showed there, of the accommodation lower down and the kind of vehicle deck space. The main feedback was one about windage, because of course if the accommodation's up higher, then there's more windage. That's just natural, and certainly that would probably affect Barra Erisgate more than it would probably affect Sound of Harris, just given the fact that it is a more exposed route. So it was a really good point. And the other points were about camper vans. So the kind of layout that we showed there with the two kind of wider car lanes, naturally that's where all the camper vans are going to go. So people were saying if cars end up on the sides, I mean, this is an operational thing that CalMac could manage, but there is the reality that potentially all those camper vans could end up off the vessel first. And then when you go into, you're trying to do the drive from Erisgate up north, then, yeah, yes. So whereas the other option that we showed, which is the kind of design C, where it's all just one car deck, the camper vans would naturally probably be pushed more over to the side, with the middle lanes reserved for either the main freight or for passenger cars. So it would be likely that they would be off first. So that was the kind of feedback that we got from both events, actually. And then, of course, the windage, as I say. In terms of the shore power for Barra, so we have, as I say, we have accepted a quotation with SSEN, and basically their job is then to reinforce the network for the power getting to that point on the pier. So SSN will take it to they'll create a substation at the port, which they'll take it to, and then it's ours stroke the council's responsibility to pick up that connection from the substation to the actual pier itself. So we would then need to do our own works, but the actual reinforcement of the network always on the responsibility of SSEN, and it's all doable. So we've applied for a 720 kVA. So that roughly gives the vessel about 550 kilowatts to put in. We have, I mean, if we're just basing it off of the phase 1 design, we don't know in the phase 2 design, but we've got just under 6 megawatt hours of batteries. So if we're getting kind of 550 in every hour, then we're able to charge the vessel during a kind of 11-12 hour layover. And again, that kind of almost 6 megawatt hours is not usable. You're probably about 80% of that is usable. So we're not really even needing the full 12 hours to charge a vessel, or likewise, if we're using a full 12 hours to charge the vessel, it would be a smaller capacity. So that would be the absolute maximum, the 720 kVA. But from SSEN's point of view, they see no concerns in being able to reinforce the network.
You want to come back? Can you speak into the mic, please?
Yes, I'll do that. As regards the camper vans coming off, if you spoke to your CalMac colleagues and asked them to do an announcement on the deck for camper vans to pull to one side for 3 minutes to let people go past, that would solve a bit of that problem. You will be aware that there's a plan to extend the working day of and extend the timetable as well. Will the batteries not be up to that, and the charging times?
Yeah, so certainly that's something we'll be considering. So what you see there from the phase 1 design, that was more than adequate for the Sound of Barra. So even with an extra couple of sailings, and the kind of 5.75 megawatt hours would be no issues for that route. I know it doesn't sound like it because that is a very exposed route in comparison to some of the phase 1 routes, but likes of your Colin Trivary Boddock and your Largs Cumbria, although they're not exposed, they're constant. 10-minute crossings, stopping for 2 minutes away again. So those capacities really are derived from them, which is more than adequate for Sound of Barra. The real challenge is more going to be Sound of Harris, particularly if the vessel's doing 10 knots, then the energy demand for the route's pretty, particularly days we are doing 5 return crossings, that 5.75 would probably have to be larger, which we don't know at this stage because that's what we're working out. But I think the reality is that it will probably have to be larger.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McLean.
Thanks, Chair. Can I make a comment on the audio in the chamber for the last 2 days and say that the audio system is not working properly? I think because I've had to go for these and my hearing is going because I am getting to that stage. But maybe it's the council that are actually trying to reduce in other words, say that we're deaf in order for us to be dumb as well. But that's hopefully not the case. But the audio system isn't working properly. It's easier to listen to them with this than it is to listen as we are. So may I make that observation first of all. Sorry for interrupting that. But thank you very much for the presentation. I'm not from Harris or from South Uist. I'm from the east coast of Lewis. So I'm not, the impact isn't as great to me as it is to the east. Well, I would say back is to the east. But first of all, I would say that it's interesting to look at your designs, but it's also a wee bit disappointing to think that the first delivery will be at least in 2030. Am I correct?
2029.
29, 30,
yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah.
That's another 4 years. Could I ask, why is it that the designs of these vessels are just happening now? Now, we know some of them. I know people who work in the oil industry and in the maritime industry, and they are actually doing a much better work at delivering vessels for their companies. In other words, they're 5, 10 years, they've already planned for their vessels. Yet here, you're just in the middle of designing. Why is it, first of all, that this has taken so long? Because the Harris people and the US people have been shouting for a considerable amount of years, and yet we're at this stage here that you're just in the beginning of the design process. Now, CMAL, this is CMAL. Calmac, I feel sorry for Calmac in one sense, because they're dependent, and I agree entirely with what Councillor MacLeod says from Harris, that there is something fundamentally wrong with the system. I have already said in this chamber that I think we should do away with CMAL. I'd be quite honest with you, because it doesn't seem to be working. Because Calmac are dependent upon the delivery from CMAL. And there's something fundamentally wrong. And I hope that there's something coming that will actually do something about this. And we're in 2025, going to 26. But my question, first of all, is why the delay? Why is it now that the design is being done? Why was this not done 5 years ago?
I can answer those questions. I would have to disagree with you on the points of CMAL not
quite-
to exist, of course, I work
liberty.
for CMAL, I'm going to say that. But the work that we are doing, I think, is, given obviously we've had our problems with 801 and 802, that aside, the 4 vessels, standardised design, these 7 small vessels, we're making the right steps to get these vessels to Calmac, so I would have to disagree with that. But in terms of timescales, there is no delay. This is the timescales. It is all driven by, first of all, it was driven by the Vessel Replacement Deployment Plan, the VRDP. That's now been replaced by the Vessel and Ports Plan as part of the Islands Connectivity Plan. So that has really driven it. And it's all been driven by operational life expiry. So this is coming after phase 1. And phase 1 is driven by those vessels that I'm saying are, Isle of Cumbria is almost 50 years old. We've got the 4 Law class vessels are almost 40 years old. The vessels here, okay, capacity-wise, they're maybe not meeting the demand that they require, but the operational life of them is much younger than what the ones we're replacing in phase 1. So there is no delay. This is the timescales. In terms of the timescales you're seeing from here, okay, a year for designing the vessel. The procurement we can't do anything about. If we are going out to an open procurement, that is the timescales for public procurement. There's no way we can do that any quicker. We'd love to be able to do it quicker, but the processes we need to follow, absolutely not. And then the 2 years for a ship design and build, that is the shipbuilding norms now. There is absolutely no doubt about it. Even for the major vessels, as you can see in Turkey, the delays that we've had there, it's not just Turkey, it's not just Scotland, it's happening worldwide. The shipbuilding norms are getting further and further apart, particularly with everything that's going on in the world, with equipment deliveries, obviously just off the back of COVID. These are getting further apart. So I would say that there's no delays. And if 2029 and 2030 is the dates, that means the log portion would actually be replaced, for example, before it reaches 30 years. It'd be much younger than the 30 years kind of goal. CMAL's goal is to get vessels replaced before they're 25, but we're playing catch up for, you know, the lack of investment that was made during that kind of 2000s period. There was a lot of vessels replaced late 90s, early 2000s, not much between kind of 2003 and 2015. The delays we've had at Ferguson's hasn't helped, which has pushed everything out slightly. But there is a pretty robust replacement programme in place now, and that's going to continue well on into the 2030s.
Second, we've got the CalMac representatives here. What interaction is there between CMAL and CalMac? Because sometimes I'm talking from a non-shipbuilding background at all, I know, but what I see is that you were talking about vessels there. Surely the best people to do that is not only Councillor MacLeod here, but the people who are operating it. That is CalMac. Their requirements, are you listening to their requirements? Because certainly at this ferry at the moment, what we've got, Loch Seaforth, we've got a problem with passengers going onto it and disembarking. So, and one of the problems is the way that passengers come off and on the ferry. Is some people are saying that the place where they're coming off the ferry is far too high and it should be a lot lower. So that's again a design problem from CMA. So I'm saying to you, I'm saying here now is, what I'm saying is how much interaction is there between CalMac and their requirements and what you are producing?
Yep, absolutely. The relationship between ourselves and CalMac is excellent. CalMac are involved right from the statement of requirements before it's a blank sheet of paper, right through all the concept design process, right through the build. To use the example of the Little Minch vessels being built in Turkey, we have CalMac members within our site team. So we have the shipbuilding experience, the design experience, but we also have the operational experience from the chief engineers and the masters. To give you an example of Loch Seaforth, I can't comment on the statement of requirements, I wasn't here at the time. However, the requirement was for the car deck to have a 5.1 metre clear height underneath the mess decks when they're stowed. That naturally lifts the passenger accommodation much higher. And that is the requirement now. The requirement on that, the Glen Sannox, the 4 boats in Turkey, is all to have 5.1 metres so that larger freight can get underneath the mess decks. And that naturally has an impact on lifting the passenger accommodation higher. So there's not really much that can be done about that. It's the same with comparing the new boats in Turkey versus the Hebrides. It causes an issue. Okay, we don't have passenger access system at these ports, but we do have gangways. So it means the gangways need to be longer. The gangways then become heavier. But that's the requirement to basically meet the freight. No problem.
I would say, you know, as chair of transportation, my discussions and I think meetings with CalMac and CMA over the last 2 or 3 years has been excellent at officer level. I would say not so much at board level, but at officer level, it's been very good. And I think the working between CalMac and CMA over the last 2 or 3 years has been excellent. Before that, I would say not so good, but recently, yes. So, you know, I've had a lot of discussions with both Lewis, David and company over the last few years, and I'm quite happy with the direction of travel at the moment. It's a bit late, maybe, but it has improved significantly. We have concerns, obviously not to upset Paul with Transport Scotland, but, you know, Paul knows that. Anyway, I'm going to let Councillor MacLeod, I think you were next.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Luz, for a very interesting presentation.
Can you speak into the mic as well?
Sorry.
Councillor MacLean's just
Can you hear me, Carl? Yeah, it's welcoming to see the proposal for a 2-vessel Sound of Harris solution, which, as Councillor MacLeod put forward before in front of me there, yeah. I'm kind of thinking, and I know we're going to discuss fixed links after, we're looking at procuring ferries that'll be here in 2030, and a 30-year lifespan maybe, but are we realistically looking at fixed link then not until after that kind of time period? And maybe that's a question for the next session. But I would also, at the risk of annoying my colleague in front of me, was there any serious consideration given, and I think I brought this up the last time you were here, of a Lochmaddy Tarbert route, which is not tidal, which is not restricted to night, which could have a bigger vessel and, you know, the capacity could be there.
I'm not going to do sloppy shoulders here, but maybe Transport Scotland, Calmac are probably best to answer these. Paul, I don't know on the fixed links, and then maybe yourselves on the Tarbert Lochmaddy.
Can you put your light off then, Lewis, and can you, I've got you in list, so if you keep your lights off, please. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And yeah, it's a valid point, obviously, that there's obviously discussions which have been had in the past and which will be done in the future regarding fixed links. I believe there was an update from my my colleagues at Transport Scotland who deal with major projects, and fixed links is definitely one of the main issues that is on their radars. Fixed links was mentioned in STPR2, I think it was recommendation 41, and it dealt with, I think, three different fixed links. There was the fixed links up here, and then also a fixed link down at Mull, joining with the mainland as well. As I understand it, my colleagues are currently working on the methodology for considering a business case and how that's going to look to the future for the actual fixed link options. And once that methodology has been looked at, specified, then there'll be a process of engagement with communities, with businesses, and with obviously transport providers as well as the councils involved to seek information and an evidence base which can actually be slotted into the business case for fixed links, and that will be presented to our investment decision-making board, and the funding mechanisms will be reviewed at that stage, and updates will be looked at by ministers as well. So there is work and there's consultation planned. It's not currently planned, but there is work happening in the background. And yeah, it would be very good even if I get some contacts that I can actually forward on to my colleagues, just so that they can have approaches, obviously with the council or direct with this Transport and Infrastructure Committee, so that they can actually continue those discussions actually going forward.
You want to come back, Ian?
No time scale, so at the moment.
No timescales at the moment, but I would hope. I wouldn't like to say a specific timescale for my colleagues because I'm not specifically involved in that piece of work. I'm more for the kind of vessels projects at ferries, but it may be useful for me to actually touch base with my colleagues and then provide a written update to the committee on the timescales after this meeting, if that's okay.
Okay, and Lochmaddy Tarbert.
I suppose if I can possibly just come in, the route for funding, basically from Transport Scotland and from the Scottish Government, there's various, again, business cases which need to be developed and need to be ratified and need to be agreed upon with the input from CalMac, from CMAL, from ourselves, from the council officials and other relevant parties. And during the business case process, all options are regularly looked at, and if there is a viable alternative route, then that will also have to be considered at that business case stage. So there is a preferred route, but there will also have to be consideration for other outside of the field ideas for service connections between the two island groupings, basically. So I would say that would have to be considered during the business case project as well.
Okay,
but sorry, thank you.
Yeah, put your light off. But I will let you in, Kenny. But can you, David?
I just asked the question was about Tarbert Lochmaddy sailings and increasing those so we take pressure off the Sound of Harris. Was that what you were asking?
Yeah, I think that's what he was asking.
Yeah. So Personally, I think that's a really good idea. It's something that I'm quite fond of, the idea we can take the freight off the Sound of Harris, because we look at the figures, the Sound of Harris takes 50% freight traffic and 50% customer traffic, which is essential. It's not my decision though, and it's something that will be coming to the communities quite quickly. We've got the 2-vessel timetable consultation piece, which is a project that I don't, are you involved in that project? So with the 2 Little Minch vessels coming online, there is consultation around the timetables that they will operate, whether that's a mix of 3 returns, 2 returns, and what that may look like. I would like to suggest that triangular part is left in, but I don't know if that's in the paper just now, so I can check for that and see if that's part of the considerations. I know there are people that are for and people that are against, but it's a consultation process at that point.
Right, we've heard the for, now we'll hear the against.
Not at all. No, I'm happy to support Lochmaddy Tarbert dedicated run, as long as it doesn't affect and reduce the preferred option of 3 sailings a day between Lochmaddy, Uig, and also Tarbert Uig. If it's going to detract from that sailing, which we've, as I said, we've spent the last 20 years at least looking for dedicated
60.
Okay, I'm not that old, Ocean, but yes, waiting for dedicated vessels on that run. We're now getting dedicated vessels in order to provide the improvement, and this is what has to be remembered. These vessels are primarily for the residents of the Western Isles to enable us to travel off and on the island. Visitors coming and for freight to come and go. So anything that limits the benefits of that has got to be seriously looked at and spent. Now, I was very disappointed to see that was one of the options in the recent consultation that came out for the Sound of Harris and the Sound of Barra routes, that there was that question sneaked in about running that. And my biggest concern is that would reduce the number of crossings between Uist and Harris to the mainland by the new vessels. But I would be fully supportive of that, having had to do the 2 legs to get to Lochmaddy previously and enjoyed the Friday afternoon Lochmaddy Tarbert direct sailing that got me home early from work many years ago. I'd be fully supportive of it as long as it didn't detract from the primary reason for those Little Minch ferries, which is to provide an improved service for the Little Minch crossings.
Okay, does anybody, can you put your light off, Councillor McNeill?
I wonder if we're going to get into a stage where there's a bit of a crossover with requirements as well, because as you've said, the small vessels on the Sound of Harris aren't going to come in until 2029. The large vessels in the Little Minch are going to come in 2026, 2027. There might be a bit of come and go, I imagine, over the next couple of years, but let's keep everything open and on the table.
I had Councillor McCormick first, so I'll let you in. Did you say something, Mustafa? Shall we let Mustafa in first, seeing he wants to? And can you speak into the mic, please?
Thanks very much, Chair. I was in fact the first one that put the light before Kenny when it started, and most of the points have been raised, but I just wanted to labor one point that my colleague raised there about the accommodation, about the lift to the accommodation for the Lochporton, as I had an injury and I know the effect of going up and down, but also the point that a high percentage of patients use that to travel to the hospital. So just wanted to add that point, that it's an important point to consider where you put the accommodation in the Lochporton, the design. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor McCormick, you can put your light on now.
Chair, I'd seek your advice. I was wondering whether I might tell my story that I told you last night.
Well, you will be allowed to ask that at the end, once we're past this discussion. Yes, I've already had a word with David here, yeah. So we're sticking at the moment to the small vessel replacement programme, and then I think the gentlemen here are happy to answer any further questions on any other issue. George, is this about the small vessels?
It does.
Yeah, carry on then.
And I'll talk into the microphone. Seems a very distant date away, 4 years hence, before the vessels are replaced. The Pentalina didn't seem to take that long when it was commissioned. Maybe I'm wrong there. And did they tender? Did that yard tender for these vessels? Thanks.
Can you leave your light on, please, George, just in case you want to
Yep.
come back? Who's going to answer that? If you know Andrew Banks tendering.
No, I can't comment on whether it was tendered. How what I can say is it's a completely different setup, given that it's a private company.
Sure.
So they are completely free to just go to a shipyard and the first shipyard that comes in with a good price, then take them. They probably don't go through the same whole design process that we go through either. I mean, we've done so much on the phase 1 work, as you can see. I would say we're almost repeating it for phase 2. Okay, the requirements are different. We're looking at a slightly bigger ship, but we're going through the whole process that we've already done, and that is to meet the questions that we get, not really from this community, but as you know, there's other vocal communities that question us, that we don't know what we're doing and that we don't do our due diligence, which is what we're doing basically. So that is why we're doing this design process. We could quite easily have started and went, we're just going to do a double-ended monohull. We know that's what works. We know that we want the accommodation in a certain way. So that's obviously the process of doing the public engagement and getting the feedback there, incorporating in the design, that takes time. I can't comment whether Pentland Ferry's done that, but I'm going to say the probably chances that not to the same extent of what we've done here.
Well, in fairness, it's been pretty suitable for Calmac to help them out on occasion. And, you know, they didn't seem to have any problems.
Yeah, no, I completely.
Thanks.
No problem.
Okay, anybody else on the small vessel replacement programme? Councillor McNeill, I nearly forgot about you.
Yes, you did forget me. It's not really 100% specific, but it's more relevant to the small vessels, and that's the booking system and the unmet demand. Sorry, I'm a regular traveller, as long as many of my other colleagues on the Sound ferries, and we have great difficulty in getting bookings at times. However, when we do travel, we have to juggle and we work around it, and we know whatever. And we're told that the ferries are full, you can't get on, and still when we travel, there is that big gap at the back. You know,
this is a very tenuous link to us.
Well, it is, but
Yeah,
it's on the Sound of Barra that this is.
But I would want to discuss it later on, Ian.
Yeah,
Yes,
well,
I have
we
it,
can discuss it later on. And
yeah.
just now, it's the same people, the same question, so it's up to yourself.
Anybody else got a question?
You're a witness. I was going to call you in as a witness on this, in fact.
Right, if you put your light off, unless you have a question relevant to SVR. Yeah. Mustafa, I mustn't forget you again.
Yes, you seem to be doing that quite often these days. It was just, I think, you mentioned something about review of pier infrastructure.
Can you talk into your microphone?
I am
please?
talking to the
mic.
mic.
But lean forward, you know.
Gonna get me a video of it. It's something to do with the review of the pier infrastructure. So, and I think you mentioned maybe the berth in Burnley will not suit certain design or need a larger. So the thing is, I'm hoping that you're not going to restrict the design, the best design, just to fit the existing pier. You hope to do the other way around, that you design the infrastructure just to.
I can answer that. Yeah. So It does limit it to an extent. However, I wouldn't say it's the only. So the Bernary berth in particular is currently at maximum size for the log portion. But that aside, for these small vessels, we wouldn't really be looking to go beyond the 50 metres. Once you do go beyond 50 metres, it really comes out of being a small vessel. There is some rule set changes, which again, for the crewing isn't really ideal given the kind of certification of the crew that we have in these vessels. So that also limits the length, so that's not too much. What certainly is more of the challenge is on the leverborough side, because we don't have a dedicated berth to tie the vessel up. There is a berth there that the vessel, that you'll maybe see the log portion there from time to time, but that is only maybe during a tidal timetable the vessel would tie up there, but the crew would never be comfortable leaving the vessel there overnight, so we couldn't really call that a dedicated overnight berth, so that's more of the challenge. But I'd say that the Bernary berth, yes, it does impact probably making the vessel longer, but it's not the only reason. I'd say the crew certification and the classification of the ship is probably the main reason for that.
Okay, and just small clarification. I think when you had one of the slides there into the overall comparisons of and you had, I think, the double-ended
Yes.
monohull, one of the red bits that it was, is it amber or red, that it was maybe just too difficult to route or reroute or something. I can't remember what you said.
What I would say, and we have discussed this at the public events, I simplified that very much to, for us for presenting to the public. There is obviously values and science that goes behind that, and these items are probably much closer in some aspects than you would look. The one that was read for the double-ended monohull that we're going for was the added resistance seaways, but that is more of a minor thing. It's not necessarily that it's got a higher resistance of the hull and then more energy demand. It's not that. It's when the vessel's actually travelling. So it's more minor. If you were to put a kind of weighting factor against these, which we have done behind the scenes, then that weighting factor of that part is pretty
not
small.
going to have an impact into less resistance.
Versus like of the energy consumption, the windage, the manoeuvrability, all these kind of aspects, the sea keeping ability, that certainly is got a much higher weighting factor against it.
That's grand. Thanks very much.
No problem.
Councillor MacLeod, I hope this is small vessels again, is it?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
I was very pleased to hear from Mr. Mackenzie that there is, I think it was Mr. Mackenzie that mentioned that there is a working group looking at the port infrastructure, and certainly from the Leverborough side, we know that needs it. It's an economic as well as a transport issue, and I think involvement with the local community. I know the fishermen down there are struggling. They're working hard, and most of their boats are at anchor because of it. The tour boats that operate to St Kilda from there, they regularly have to move out and move up to Tarbert for shelter when the wind's in the southwest. It's in desperate need for it, and I think as part of the works, the ferry has to be going there. We know that. We've agreed today that the two vessels on the Centre of Ireland one of them has to be on the Leverborough side. So I would hope that the discussions going forward will have a whole, and I think it's one of the benefits that we've got, that there's the three organisations are there, that everybody gets a clear picture, and we see the whole picture, not just one person's or one organisation's view on things, but we want the whole picture that the Port of Leverborough being developed. There's no point developing one bit of it and not doing the rest. And economies of scales and saving for the council would be working with yourselves, fishermen and others, to try and get the best package obviously for the least money when there's tight money, because the ferry has to go there. So that is the imperative. So I would hope that discussions will be actively pursued to design and come up with a berth there for the new 24 car vessel that's going to come in there.
Hopefully 32. But no, I would certainly agree with that. And obviously this has all been looked at, and we still have to put a business case together, and obviously it's got to be approved. So nothing is set in stone. But we've got to basically record all the costs, the timescales with these things. And what we don't want to happen in terms of infrastructure is delay new vessels coming into service. So that will also be being looked at over the next couple of months. And just when you mentioned about the three organisations, I would actually add that it's almost the four organisations work together, as Callum said. Yeah. Callum and his team sit on the working group, which is great because we're having very good discussions between the four organisations.
And
And we have had, yeah, we've had some engagement with the Leverburgh Port Users Group.
Okay,
So they made contact with us and we had some online meetings, and again, we're hoping there'll be some attendance from them at the event tonight. And then if not, we'll try and arrange some further meetings with them.
Okay, and hopefully there will be, just to justify the case for it, there'll be an economic impact assessment done to show the need for the Scottish Government to open the purse strings and put the money there to save our economy. They've been quite happy to spend money in saving jobs in Port Glasgow, but a fraction of that would be hugely beneficial to the Western Isles. So I think there is an economic, there's a social, there's various arguments, not just for transportation. So I think it has to be looked at, and these are all brought into the equation for ensuring that the funding is found to develop the port so that the vessel can berth there, and other marine users can also benefit and help the economy of our islands.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, and all valid points. The other point as well is that the community needs assessments have recently concluded. I'll note the point about one of the questions maybe not being as accurately worded as maybe it should have been. So I'll take that back to my colleagues. But yeah, we're looking at the kind of holistic views from all participants, all customers, all people who regularly use transportation links, basically to the Western Isles, and how those can be evidenced, what the minimum requirement to ensure the prosperous and economic security of the Western Isles and the various routes basically on and off the islands, including the ferry services. Obviously, there's the air links, and then I've already spoken about the kind of fixed links in the longer term future. So that's also going to feed into those considerations. But it's a good point made regarding the kind of community and views which need to be sought to kind of underpin the business cases, so that we have that evidence base, so that it is the value for money aspects can actually be weighed up in a fair and balanced way, not just necessarily in the kind of cold hard way of infrastructure is needed, this is the bare minimum, etc., etc. So those points will be taken forward as well.
Can you put your light off, Ray, please?
Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, and hopefully on the fixed links that the views of CMAL will have changed since then. From, was it last October when we had the meeting with them in Harris, and fixed links were told, and the comparison with the Faroes was made, and we were told that we had the wrong type of rock here. But hopefully that will not hold back the exploration of fixed links across the Sound of Harris.
Was this question on the small vessel trade?
It's to do with the costs, actually. And I know I'm sort of looking further down the line, but it has been mentioned today already, sort of as an aside, but there's, even on the Sound of Harris, there's got to be work done at Leverburgh. There's got to be the 2 new ferries, there's got to be dredging, there's got to be something done probably to the other side as well. And the same will probably happen as far as Eriskay to Barra. But my point that I wanted to make was, and it has been mentioned, is to do with the fixed link. Now, are we talking about 50 or 100 years hence? You know, what is the current thinking? I mean, we're going to obviously have these ferries a long time before a fixed link.
Can you keep your light on, Ray, please, in case you're coming back?
Thank you. Yes, as as I tried to highlight earlier, I don't specifically work on the fixed link, so I wouldn't like to actually be giving an erroneous or a wrong timescale, basically, to the committee. So the best option I can give is actually to speak to my colleagues at Transport Scotland who are involved, who are looking at the methodology, who are looking to put together a business case with following consultation and engagement with all parties here in the Western Isles on the specific links. But I would say that it's not. I wouldn't think that it would be within the next 5 to 10 years, and that is why the replacement of the ferries is a necessity, given the facts that we've actually talked about regarding life expectancy of the vessels and also the kind of harbour upgrades which actually need required to allow those vessels to basically come in. So the timeframes, I'll write back to the committee on the timeframes for consultation, for engagement, and also for rough estimates as to the kind of process going forward and an estimated delivery time for the fixed links. But I wouldn't like to speak out of turn and give wrong information at this time, if that's okay.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, there's no way that I'm suggesting that ferries don't go ahead. But it's interesting to hear, and I would like to hear, you know, what the thinking along that is. We were told that at some point, I don't know who made the suggestion, but that even on the basis of the Stornoway Ullapool ferry, that a fixed link would pay itself within 10 years. Piers, harbours, boats, like I said.
Okay, so you'll write back to the committee, Paul. Yeah. Can I ask Lewis, in terms of tidal restrictions, of which we have an increasing number, and you worried me about the draft of 2.14 and commonality of vessels, surely that's going to make tidal restrictions more of an issue.
So no, it's certainly warranted, given the tidal restrictions you already have. But certainly with what we're looking at with the bathymetric survey that's been done and the potential new route, this is not looking at a route that's going to extend the length of the journey by any significant time. Maybe there might be a 5-minute addition, we don't know at this moment in time. But that would then look at us capturing all the deeper parts of the water and not the shallow parts that we're currently doing. And that would then allow us to have the 2.14. Also working with CalMac and looking at how they look at their tidal restrictions and, you know, the under keel clearance of the vessel as well. So that's all been looked at between ourselves and CalMac over this time. But certainly I can reassure you that we would not be looking to bring in a vessel that's going to have more tidal restrictions than we currently have. We're looking to obviously try and reduce that as much as we possibly can.
Okay, thank you, Lewis. Leader.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the presentation. It's been really interesting discussion today. Just linked to that last point you made, so is there a suggestion that the new route could be put in place prior to the new vessels coming in? Because
that's something that we're exploring, yes. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Right, any more questions on small vessels? Don't think so. Right, Councillor McCormack. I know what you're going to say, so you don't need to read it line by line, and I've told David already. So,
thank you very much.
A summary will do nicely.
Understood. First of all, I'd very much like to thank our visitors for the excellent way in which they've managed our microphones. I just hope that my councillor colleagues have taken note. And thank you, Chair, for pointing out the issues. This is a matter of passenger information and cancellations. On Wednesday last, I was to come back on the ferry from Ullapool to Stornoway. Received a message to my phone to say that there was a possibility the sailing might not go ahead, but not saying that it was cancelled. So we proceeded to Ullapool. We checked twice with Ullapool on the journey, and again the situation was just as was. Maybe it will go, maybe it won't. We arrive in Ullapool, we're checked in. I would say at least 100 vehicles were checked in, and we're all sitting there in the car park waiting to board the ferry. and then the staff start wandering around, chapping on the windows and telling us that the ferry is not going to go. At this point, the ferry is arriving, and it has sailed from Stornoway. We discover the following day that the overnight ferry with freight went, and then the 10:30 in the morning went, and we got on the 17:30 in the evening. We were suggested that we go down to the office, the CalMag office in Ullapool, to find out what the situation was. They had absolutely nothing to tell us, nothing to tell us. They couldn't guarantee us when we might get on the ferry. And as we were leaving with that absence of information, the bus arrived with 30-odd passengers, and they were just learning at that moment that they were not going to be getting on the ferry. So what I'm asking is that the system has to be better than that. You can't have hundreds of people arriving in a port and having to wait. And it could happen at any of our ports, not just the Ullapool Stornoway situation. And there must be, I think, somebody in Ullapool in this particular instance who can help people to find accommodation. I mean, some people said to me right away, right, we're going back to Inverness. And then we start hearing stories about the cost of hotel accommodation in Inverness just going through the roof. Somehow or other, the word gets through. I ended up staying in Evanton. My daughter was traveling with me. Unfortunately, she knew how to do all these sort of things on her phone. I wouldn't have been able to do it personally. I don't know what I would have done. A gentleman passed me as I was going into the office of CalMag, shaking his head and saying, I don't know what I'm going to do. Where am I going to stay tonight? So I think you have to have a look at the system and have a better system than that, because that put so many people under great stress. And I'm just asking if CalMag can look at finding a system which is an improvement on that. I know that there's a skipper involved and all that sort of thing, but I've spoken to a skipper since I've come home, and he says when he was a skipper, that would never have happened. Thank you.
Okay, David.
Well, first of all, I'd just like to say sorry for that experience. That was pretty horrible. I've seen your letter, Justin passed it on to me last night, and it's not something that we take lightly. Obviously, the cancellations, particularly the late cancellations, in a part of the country that's miles from anywhere else. It does take everybody to travel. We can learn from it, and I do agree there are systems that we can improve or we can change to make it better. We've just appointed a new port manager in Ullapool, and one of every port manager's objectives for this year is to build our disruption management and resilience plan. So that will include where can people go to stay if they have to. We will have some sort of phone numbers and some advice that we can give people. It's not something that's there yet. It's not something that's been there in the past. It's been done at ports through best endeavours and local knowledge, but we need to get better at that. We also need to get better at that whole communication to people that are travelling on the bus. As much as I feel bad for you, I feel worse for the person that turned up at 5 o'clock on a bus to not get on the ferry. So we're looking at how we can communicate to the stagecoach drivers or the CityLink drivers in this case, or how we can advertise at Inverness bus station to say, look, the ferry is at a heightened risk of disruption. Please consider whether you want to travel or not want to travel, because there's a possibility that we won't be able to get you across. It's one of these situations where you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. We could cancel it early and still go, or we could not cancel it and be left late. But I do fully appreciate and will take those actions on board for us to look at that and make it a bit more seamless. And it is what we're trying to do. It's just unfortunate that was quite a late cancellation from the ferry to the port or to us centrally. And if we could have got maybe half an hour before that, we could have saved a lot of people a lot of a poor experience. So I do apologise for that. I'm really sorry that's happened, and we will improve on it.
Councillor McNeill. booking system. Yeah, you might as well leave it on for the next 2 hours.
It's not the first time you've heard this question raised or whatever. So what, you know, we all hear is work in progress, this is that, and we're going in, you know, when is this booking system going to get sorted out? It's costing Calmac a fortune, it's costing the public purse a fortune, and it's costing people that are travel time and the disruption. And we're not talking one car or whatever. You know, it's been, you know, yes, improvements have been made, but still it's nowhere near good enough.
Yeah, and I know that Ian Graham is working with the Borough Transport Committee, amongst others, to make those improvements and to try and tighten up or configure the system in a much more beneficial way for the Loch Allen. If you know my background was in the booking system, and I'm doing this job on an interim basis, and I'll go back to working on the booking system. It's not absolutely not my fault. But I'll not tell you whose fault it is in case you find them. But I'll go back to that, and I'll go back with a lot of points to raise with the system and with the roadmap going forward. There are things that I've seen in this experience that have really tied back to some of the things that we were planning to fix and we were planning to put into that roadmap, amongst the sort of capacity management thing, the change of coordinates for the vessels to make sure that they allow for the correct vessel size to be taken up. There are also behavioural changes that we're influencing as well, so you'll be aware that when you look at the booking system, that tells you a real life at that moment in time view of what's booked on that ferry. Now, if you get to the ferry and there's been cancellations or no shows, then that will show up as empty space because on the day they haven't turned up. So we are moving some levers internally to make sure that we're tighter on terms and conditions with large vehicles so that we don't have as many no shows or late cancellations, and that becomes more of a general population space, because we do have a lot of customers that are booking up space but not using it. But apart from that, we're just on that journey, Tam, to keep on improving. And you raised unmet demand, and unmet demand is one of the things that we haven't ever been able to capture, and we're still unable to capture. Things like that are the nuggets that I'll be taking back, and understanding how the system can measure that, or how we can measure it with some sort of trigger in the system and formula to figure out what it is. But I would say it is getting better. It's getting better network-wide. There's improvements being made, and there's a roadmap for improvement. And I don't know what your communication on that roadmap has been from the team. Have the e-booking team been out to discuss with you where it's going or where it's? So maybe that's something that I can take back as an immediate action to say we need to communicate where we're going with this system in a more formal manner, rather than me being kind of blindsided and not knowing exactly what's happening, just what was happening 10 months ago. So would you be okay if I took that action home?
Yeah. And another thing that I've noticed, just as a minor but important thing, is the amount of times that you turn up and the booking in system doesn't work. It's booked, you know, you're there, you just drive on because the system is I don't know, is it the gun that's broken, or is it?
I could check for you. I'm not.
You know, that's a regular thing.
And if that's is that the Ardmore side?
Yeah, both sides.
Both sides.
Yeah.
I'll go and chin Ian about it, because I'm not entirely sure about the Ardmore Eriskay route, but we did historically have network issues there with the scanners linking up to the correct network.
The scanners, that's the word.
Yeah, but I'll take that one back and see if I can get an answer for you of what's going on with regards to that.
Okay. Peter.
Thank you, Chair. Linked to unmet demand and the small vessel replacement, what colour are you painting the decks? Sorry, flippant comment. Right. No, my question was, we had a really interesting presentation from Outer Hebrides Tourism yesterday, and obviously they've done a bit of work about visitor numbers over the last few years. So visitor numbers are up 53% since 2017. But at the same time, occupancy in hotels are sitting probably about 57% in the summer. That suggests that not enough people are actually able to get on. Coming back to your point about unmet demand, it's something that we've not really been able to capture. One of the other things, Councillor Fraser, your microphone's on. Thank you. Just in case he says anything. So one of the points I raised yesterday was about the number of travellers. So actual visitors coming, they're saying they couldn't break down who was a resident and who was coming over as a visitor. And there seems to be a simple solution to that in the data that CalMac obtain in terms of postcodes. So when you make a booking, you put in your postcode. So is there a way that CalMac could provide that information so that we know who's travelling that is resident in the Western Isles and who's travelling to the Western Isles as a visitor? I think it would help us with the tourism aspect of the economy. So just that small request.
David, just leave your light on. There's several more questions coming your way.
Just with regards to that postcode thing, it is something that we capture. So for online bookings, we will be able to figure out whether somebody's coming from the island or going to the island, going home, or whether they're from Wolverhampton or whatever. So we can do that, and I can present that to whoever wants to see it. I'll organise that for you.
I think that would be useful after yesterday's. Just keep your light on, David. Yeah. Have you got another question, Councillor MacLeod?
Just it's an ongoing thing on the booking system. I think we've had this discussion a number of times, and there's I can understand the desire to make it all work electronically, but I think that we had the presentation from the gentleman who's trying to design the system, who said the difficulty of writing a program that accurately replicates all the card decks, which every single card deck is different. It might change when we get the four for Turkish vessels, not a wee bit there, but when you're allocating 27 meters of deck space for a 17-meter Arctic, and then that Arctic turns up, but there's still 10 meters of deck space that's been allocated that's not bookable. We're still seeing it. Why is there no consideration given to the way things used to be before you brought this system in? I'll not see anything in my thoughts on the system, but previously where you could book centrally and then something like the last 2 weeks, the control of the booking moved to the local office, who know their trade, who know the vessel, and who know what they can and can't get on it, to be more accurately able to, surely with advances in IT, that shouldn't be a difficulty, that the booking is held for the Stornoway Liverpool. Anything going on in Stornoway is controlled from Stornoway. They can know what they can fit on. We saw an example recently of an excellent job done in Liverpool where the last two vehicles were actually put on across the back to get them on, which is great. But it frustrates the life out of me the number of times folks say to me, we didn't have a booking, we turned up and we got on and there's loads of space. Now, for some of the sailings, that might be large vessels. For the Uig Tarbert, that's highly unlikely because you could probably count in one hand the number of large vessels you get in a week. It's causing lots of problems. It needs to be resolved. I'm not sure how, but I think we have to find a solution because it is causing great problems to us throughout the Western Isles. Every single ferry has the same issues, and people aren't unmet demand. We don't know. And at a previous, I think it was at the High Trans meeting, we asked the same question when the justification for having only 2 crossings on the new Little Minch vessels was because of demand. But you couldn't tell us how much wasn't able to get on because of the system. So any data that's used by CalMac is only really what you've carried. And the other thing in the booking system is it frustrates lighter for me that as a company, CalMac aren't maximising the revenue from their vessels by ensuring that they sail full every time or as full as possible. and there's lots of lost revenue through folk not turning up because they can't get a booking and then finding that they could have got across, but those bookings are lost to us. So I think there's the frustrations of folk not coming across, and also CalMac not really being that focused on ensuring that they have a system that ensures they have maximum use of their vessels at all times.
Yeah, and I agree on points there as well, because we are putting a lot of effort into that understanding of exactly what's happening. As you said, in the Loch Seaforth, they managed to get 2 people on perpendicular to the rest of the traffic. Now, that wasn't a car space. There's no way we can open that up for somebody to buy that. But
no, but that was the local office.
Yeah,
that was the local office looking at and working with the crew
and it always
to ensure there's
level.
maximum capacity.
So last Thursday, after the weather disruption that we had on Wednesday, we managed to get something like 16 cars on by utilising different spaces, by asking customers to take a later sailing, maybe asking a commercial customer to come later and use their space. The local offices do always do that reactive and on the day and leading up to the sailing. We can't give them control of it 2 weeks out. We can't leave it open to that much kind of use, but there's many teams within the business looking at how we improve on deck space. They've done some work on the Sound of Barra, they're doing work on the Loch Seaforth, and they're doing work throughout the fleet to make sure that A, the configuration of the vessels is right, B, we've got to change with the supplier to try and get individual coordinates so that your 17 metre doesn't always take up however many metre, 27 metres or whatever it is. That could be vessel specific, but it's a change to the booking system. So we're working through that, and it's not quite a quick and easy solution because there are different factors in it.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why, when previously, and I've done myself, where I phoned up coming home and the booking's closed, you got to go to the phone the local office, and you phone the local office and you get sorted out. Why is it a fear of losing control centrally to the area? We've now got additional managers in ports, additional staff in the ports, so it should be easier to do that now than it ever was before, to control that booking. So why is there this desire to keep everything centrally and not make the most efficient use of all the staff and the experience that you have in all the ports to ensure the maximum benefit for the company?
Well, I believe that the most efficient way, and you're not seeing it right now, but the most efficient way to do this would be through a central point and not have individual ways of working. At the moment, it's not. And at the moment, that's not how it's working. At the moment, the ports do have a lot of control over who gets on the day and how we move things around. It's a journey, and it's not one that we're starting from the best position. We've had to come in and put this system live. It didn't go very well. We're now reverting back to a place where we probably should have been in March 2023 when it went live, and we were just then having to tweak bits and change bits that we know about. So I would stick with this, and when I've got the action from Tam to come out and talk about where e-booking is and where it's going, I'll make sure that we include where the capacity bit is as well, and how we're making improvements on that, because I can't speak verse about it just now, but I'll make sure that whoever can is presenting about it.
In the meantime, we wait and take the loss in our economy of the folk who can't get on until you can sort it, when hopefully by using the folk in your port. The port staff are fantastic. If you turn up, they'll get you on if at all possible. But the problem isn't there. The problem is the folk who've tried to get on and don't travel because the risk of not getting on is too great, so they don't come. So they're all lost to us in our economy, whether it's visitors coming on holiday or contractors coming to do some work.
Yes.
So until the capacity issue is sorted and the booking system is sorted out properly and efficiently so that maximum use of the vessels, our economy still suffers. And that's the concern we have, that it was brought in 2023. We're now 2 years down the line. We're no closer to finding a solution to maximising the use of the vessels. And meanwhile, our numbers are going down. visitors coming to the island. It may not just be on the booking, there are maybe other issues, but it's still concerning that numbers are going down and people aren't coming here because they can't get on the vessels. And that's something that has to be sorted and quickly, and a solution found because these are lifeline vessels for us. We keep seeing it, but it's, they're vessels for their visitors. They're not there for visitors. They're there for us first and foremost. And if we can't be travelling on them and using them for what they're there for, we have no other option for getting on and off the island other than the vessels.
Yeah.
They have to be working for us, and we have to be able to get on them. And if that regularly you're turning up and you want to go off for a funeral, for a hospital appointment, or even to go and get stuff, DIY stuff, all that, and you can't get on, it's having a serious effect on our communities.
Yeah.
And I think it needs to get sorted.
And I agree, just if you'd like me to get the right
sorry,
person to talk to you about it.
You made the point, Kenny, I think, but if we can move forward with some separate meeting on the booking.
Yeah, I can maybe try and invite them here or invite them.
You know, that would be useful as soon as possible.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, carry on. Sorry. Norman.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And all the members of your committee. I don't mean to pile it on. I've had some great experiences with getting on ferries where I've turned up late, where I've been on standby. I've seen myself crammed in at the back of the ferry. I know what it's like. I'm talking about Stornoway to Ullapool here, where you're within 6 inches of the car in front. You're crammed in. They'd make absolutely maximum use of the space. I think what we're talking about here is a uniformity of approach on how we load the ferries, and like a degree of autonomy for the guys who are loading the ferries to be able to get people onto the ferry. Go on the ferry in Stornoway, you are crammed into the spaces so that there's room, that maximise the amount of room that's behind for people who are on standby. I've been several places down the queue and standby in Harris, the same thing. You absolutely get crammed on. I was in Uist on the way back from playing golf in Asconish. The Bernary ferry was cancelled because it had broken down, so we came through Lochmaddy to Tarbert on standby. Turned up, joined the queue. I said to the guy, I just turned up on spec, I'm going on standby. Oh, he says, you need to be booked on standby. I went, what do you mean you need to be booked on standby? Yeah. Going to the office, had to get booked onto standby. Sitting there waiting for the ferry to load, and the guy pulled up behind me, and the guy walked up and he says, hi, I'm trying to get on standby. Oh, he says, the queue for standby closed half an hour ago. I was thinking, how did the queue for standby close? I mean, you're on standby or you're on standby. Anyway, loaded onto the ferry, and quite frankly, it was like an episode of one man and somebody else's dog. It was like a thank. I was 10 feet away from the car in front. They could have probably got double the capacity onto the ferry. So there seems to be a different approach to how you're going to load the ferry. You know, I mean, the ferry's a big space, and if you've got people waiting, and people were waiting in Lochmaddy because they couldn't get on the Leverborough crossing, and there seemed to be a kind of laissez-faire attitude to getting people onto the boat. I'm sure if you were a private company, you're trying to maximise your revenue, you'd have crammed people onto that boat. But I think the approach to getting people onto the boat, and we're talking about what Kenny was alluding to here, is people turning up and not knowing if there's space, etc. But the approach I found from Lochmaddy to Tarbert was completely different from Stornoway and from Tarbert itself. It just seemed to be a case of can't be bothered maximising the capacity of the ferry. And I don't know if anything's changed on that particular route. I would like to think it has, but a uniform approach to how we're putting people onto the boat. We should be getting as many people onto the boat at any particular time as we can, not just saying standby's closed, you can't get on, and then you arrive on the boat and there's space everywhere. And I think that's what we're finding with a lot of cases. There is space, and we're surely digitally advanced enough to know what's turning up, what has turned up, what capacity has been added by something not turning up, usually an Arctic probably, or two Arctics maybe not utilising the booking. You know, and being able to be flexible enough and smart enough at the port loading level to say, well, we can let X amount of cars on, and if we're smart with how we pack them in, we can get. And I'm not suggesting everybody goes on two at a time in the back, but just a uniform approach to maximising the capacity. And I don't think it's beyond us in this digitally and technologically advanced age to be able to swiftly calculate what can be done and what can't be done, and for that to go back to the queue that are in standby and say, sorry guys, but you're not going to get on.
And it's maybe even at a non-digital level as well. Maybe it's just
just common sense. Common sense. I mean, I was quite kind of shocked by been used to getting crammed onto a ferry and then being parked as far, well, not as far as from me to you, say as far as from me to the front of that desk away from the car in front. I was thinking, strange. And the car behind me was the same distance back again, and I was thinking to myself, and those guys in standby getting told you can't get on, standby's closed. I was thinking that kind of laissez-faire attitude towards movement.
I wouldn't expect a laissez-faire attitude in Lochmaddy.
Well,
I think, David, the difficulty with the Hebrides is, as Norman says, of course, it's the bigger cars. So if you pack them beside each other, because they're so narrow, the people in the car can't get out. So they tend to leave that kind of space all the time now, so that people can get in and out of the car.
I don't go through the window.
Well, I think the thing is that there's loads of ways we can do it, and as an area like North Hebrides, we have Tarbert, Lochmaddy, Uig, Liverpool and Stornoway port managers now all working together and working in a more collaborative method. Before it was siloed.
Don't get me wrong, which is not one experience, because I think the job these guys at the ports do is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Angus had a bad experience with travelling, but we've got to be thankful for the port staff we have. They do have a very good job. And in this particular instance, I couldn't get over the fact that there wasn't an imperative to fill the boat, given the Leverborough sailing had been cancelled.
Yeah, and the unfortunate thing is that could have been an Arctic that didn't show up, but it could have been carrying dangerous goods, so take up more space. And we may not have known it wasn't showing up until almost the point of sailing. So that's
just a uniform approach to loading.
That's where we're tightening things up on terms and conditions and making sure that we are a bit more strict in following this, so that we do have that opportunity to say they're not coming. So get 10 cars on.
Thanks. Sorry, thanks for your presentation as well, guys. All of you. Thank you.
Right, Malcolm.
Thank you, gentlemen. That was a very interesting presentation. I'm going back a little bit towards where you started. In other words, the sound of Harris and the sound of Barra. And it's not cars I'm talking about, it's foot passengers and cyclists. And it's not just what happens on board, it's waiting at the likes of Ludak and Bernera and Leverborough, etc. There's small waiting rooms, and if you're waiting there, it's lovely in summer, but in winter, my goodness, it can be awful. The lights don't work. Sometimes there's no heating, and you're sitting there. Really, these facilities should be upgraded, because if you're waiting in your car, you've got a heater, etc. But for these people waiting there, I remember waiting in Bernera Harris for, well, it was Harris, it's now used. And thanks to you gentlemen, it's been linked up. And it was freezing and was dark, waiting for a bus to go down to Daliborough. And of course you had to change in Benbecula as well. And so food passengers in winter, it's really, really not nice at all. I'm just wondering if you could upgrade the facilities a little bit, so perhaps heaters could come on after the temperature goes down too much, and perhaps the lights should come on once it gets dark, things like that, and perhaps a bit of maintenance. There are toilets, and the cleaner does clean them, not bad at all considering the numbers that use them, but it's just perhaps we forget food passengers. And to go back to Councillor McCormack, I remember hearing when I was in the bus that the ferry wasn't going to sail, and the driver stopped and told us. And I got off at Conton and phoned my nephew to come and pick me up, and there was snow falling, but everybody else in the bus had to go all the way to Ullapool and then come all the way back to Inverness. And it was just, the driver had told us before there were doubts, if it could just be told just before the bus goes, then people can get off or just go home. So thank you very much again.
I think, to be fair, the waiting rooms are a Comhairle's responsibility, Louis. Alan, do you want to answer that?
I've been having such an easy time so far. I was just hoping that my colleagues here would solve it for me. Yes, the facilities need to be looked at, Councillor MacDonald. But again, it comes along with our own priorities as well of what we can maintain and how we can maintain them. But I take the point that they should be fit for purpose at these ports for the food passenger. So I'll have a look to see what improvements can be made.
Surely you don't have any more questions.
No, I was hoping
I'll make
that
sure it is a question.
it's just a request for an update. I was hoping that one of my my other colleagues, certainly my Lewis colleagues, would have asked this question, but just wondering what the position is with the serious concerns that have been raised for vessel capacity, basically from the start of next year onwards, with all the works that's going to be happening in Lewis, and the need for at least 2 vessels on the Stornoway run permanently to get us through the logjam. The Seaforth can barely cope at the moment, as we're hearing, and certainly routing it through routing traffic through Skye and Harris is environmentally not good, let alone causing serious problems for the people who rely on that vessel for coming back and forth between Harris and Lewis and the mainland. So I'm just wondering where we are with getting something in place before the demand happens and the island is grinds to a halt because we can't get anybody moving off the island.
Right, who's going to answer that? David, you got your light on.
Okay, so through discussions with SSEN, primarily about the stuff that's coming in, and with the Stornoway Port Authority, very little is going to come through via the ferry. And it'll all come through via freight services with regards to the battery storage, with regards to wind farm turbines and the likes. So we're not expecting a huge increase in demand from heavy freight. We'll probably see a big increase in demand from travellers. So we need to think of that profile rather than the freight profile.
Well, that was a main concern. Our main concern, obviously, there's a lot of freight will come in on vessels, but not everybody, not every worker, not every company coming to work here, not every tradesperson is going to come on the freight. There's going to be a lot of traffic using the vessel. Now, we spoke about the Little Minch and the 60 years it's taken to give us the 2 vessels on there. There's probably the same length of time, or at least since before the Loch Seaforth was built, everybody was saying it should be 2 vessels here. The wisdom, and I'd put that in inverted commas, of Edinburgh was to give us 1 vessel. We're now seeing that there is a demand for 2 vessels on there. I'm trying to get back onto the island at the end of October, or middle of October, and there are no vacancies on any of the sailings Sunday or Monday, and I'm coming through Harris on the Alfred because that's the only one that's available through lack of capacity. Now that's the Loch Seaforth just now. You add in there potential of up to 1,500 workers coming to the island. Some of them will be in temporary accommodation and will be travelling back and forth on a regular basis. That demand is going to come there. It's too late to start thinking about that when they're here. We need to have that in place now. And Stornoway Port Authority can say that they can cope with all the freight. That's fine, it's great for them. But it's us as islanders who are going to be impacted by the seriously increased demand for the passenger ferry service.
Does anybody want to respond back to that? I think it's a point well made. Everybody's looking at you, David.
Me again. So no, I do take your point. So we will need to look at what that looks like going forward. I wasn't aware that has the infrastructure been started for all the works and it's all been signed off and ready to go, or are we still on assumption that it's going ahead? What's the current?
As far as I'm aware, some of the renewables work has still to go through planning, but when it goes through planning, it will be starting. But we've seen the time it takes and the difficulties you've had in arranging cover for when the Loch Seaforth goes off to dry dock just now, and you're using this. I think there's at least 4 vessels, I think, being required to cover that freight service for while one vessel is out. Now, if the Loch Seaforth breaks down, heaven forbid it does, but if that was to break down at a busy time, what's going to happen here? The Hebrides certainly won't be able to cope with the demand, and it's probably more for Seamal that they're the ones. And again, this is where the whole system, as it is currently, falls completely down, because Calmac are the ones who have to provide the service, but they can only do so much with the vessels they've got, and unless the vessels are there, you can't provide a service. And everybody's been saying, and this is the 3rd meeting I think I've been at here in this year, where the concerns of this chamber have been for the lack of ferry capacity over the next 5 years. Not just freight, but just general ferry capacity. And I'm just wondering, is there an update? Is there progress? Is there action being taken to provide that? Or is it like everything else that I highlighted at the start, and it's heard but not listened to?
I think, Callum, has an update for you. I didn't want to stop you in mid-flow at all. I should have. I know. Callum.
Thank you, Chair. As you're probably aware, Councillor MacLeod, the Comhairle has a major development oversight board who are looking at the potential impact for all these major developers. Kevin Hobbs, CEO of Seamal, will be in Stornoway next Thursday discussing requirements with all the major developers.
Good.
So, that is the level it's at just now. It's getting an understanding of timescales and indeed the resources required by all of these major developers, because that's just emerging just now as they work out with their nominated contractors, their resource plans. The point you make, though, is very, very good, because there are things kicking off even just now that are creating capacity problems for us. SSEN are, you'll be aware of the transmission work going on between Stornoway and Harris. A lot of freight coming across there, just with poles and workers. You've also got BT Openreach about to kick off with some significant works for broadband. So the R100 and the Project Gigabyte projects are starting. SSEN have also got distribution network works starting as well imminently. So over and above the major developers, you are seeing other support infrastructure work starting as well. We need, as a Comhairle and as that oversight board, to get a better feel for all these resource requirements. But our air services and our ferry services will be stretched because of them. And I think as we get that information and feed into the right channels at Transport Scotland, at Seamal as well, we can start working on these solutions. So from an officer level, it's not been forgotten about it. We're very, very conscious of these issues happening and just trying to create that picture to the right people to actually have the right conversation.
Thanks. Yeah, I knew you'd have your finger on the pulse on that one.
Yeah.
It was more aimed at our visitors to ensure that they're not forgetting it either, because I know it's on top of your pile anyway. So thanks, Arch.
Yeah. You want to
I'd just like to say that as well, there's been some discussions basically at council level, obviously between Seamal, Transport Scotland and other parts of Scottish Government. So there is an awareness if I can be as blunt as that, that there are potential capacity constraints coming down with this major piece of work, but that's not at the expense of the other projects which have been highlighted, which are also putting strain currently and in the future. And it's we do look to our colleagues at CalMac to have that information, to provide that information to Transport Scotland, to Scottish ministers, and to alert us of those facts. They do a fantastic job. We have regular contract management meetings where demand is discussed and capacity is discussed around the network on a monthly basis, if not even more frequently. And obviously, it's for the operator to see what can actually be done with the vessels that are actually at their disposal. However, if there's anything that can be done to supplement that with moving vessels around or anything, then obviously we'll look at that as we get that information coming forward. Thanks.
As long as it's not robbing Peter to pay Paul, as has been happening so more up to now, but that actually a vessel dedicated to it, because there's no point in moving them around when it's all you're doing is moving the pain somewhere else and one community suffering and the benefit of another. There needs to be capacity and resilience built into the system. It's not there, and it's not just West. All the islands are suffering. So I think Transport Scotland needs to get a grip of that. That the reality and CMAL have to be given the resources, because CalMac will do the work. As we say, CalMac are putting the resources in. They tell you the capacity, but it's no point telling them if there's no vessels. They can tell you as much as they like, but if there isn't a vessel to deal with it, but those vessels have to be there, and that's a cost that has to be borne to ensure the continued services here.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, they're all valid points. And we're trying to get to a position, obviously, with the ambitious programme of the replacement vessels, that we have the capacity, or at least the resilience within the fleet, so that CalMac can adapt as they need to. And also, it's very valid, the point regarding some vessel cascades have unduly impacted other communities. Obviously, down in Loch Boysdale, there's been issues there over the past year, if not longer. So those items in the public sentiment and the feeling are well known, and yeah, we're aware of those, and we're moving forward to try and get some capacity within the fleet so that CalMac has that ability to basically move forward. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Paul. I've got a question for you, Lewis, in terms, and you might not be able to answer this. It's to do with ground investigation works at Gassay. Where are we with that?
Yeah, I don't have an update for that, but again, I can give you an update in writing. That's
Yeah,
suitable.
yeah. I believe it's out to tender, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
I believe so.
Yeah, it would be good to get an update on that. And I was going to ask David on the drop trailers at Uig.
Question about drop trailers at Uig.
Yeah, was there not going to be a pilot in terms of the drop trailers issue rather than having a tractor and trailer unit on the ferry?
Not at Uig,
Yeah,
there was
there
one in
was.
Eilean.
Hmm?
There was one ongoing in Eilean.
Yeah, but you were going to look at the Duncan Mackison said you would look at Uig as well.
I'll check when I go back.
Can you
There's
do
nothing
that?
ongoing
Yeah.
just now.
Yeah,
Let me find that out.
it's when the new vessels come in.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be good. Councillor McNeill.
Thank you. I'm not going to go over the normal borough questions because they're frequently asked as regards the Lewis replacement, etc. But there's one thing that's been asked many times, and we've told it's going to get sorted, and that was the return of the hauliers meeting that used to take place several years ago, that like an annual meeting with yourselves in Glasgow, and we were told, I think about a year ago, that this was going to be reinstated. Do any of you, do you have any updates on that?
Sorry, there's two lights on, so I can't.
Well, I'll put mine off if that
No,
helps
no,
you
it's
in
all
any way.
right.
I
No,
don't
no,
have an
I
update
have
on
you,
it,
Norman, don't
but
worry.
I do know it's been discussed, and in fact, I think it was discussed here the last time we were up, and Duncan had said it was going to go ahead. So let me, when I'm chasing them up about the UIG drop trailers, I'll chase them up about that as well and see if I can get an update as to when that may be.
Yeah, it was popular with hauliers, actually, yeah. To have that. You have another question?
And what's I've got you, you know, when you're paying £1,000 for an HGV on the Sounder Barra, and you know you're working your taco and tight hours. One thing that was asked was meals could be, drivers' meals could be included in a fare like that, and it got knocked back. But you know, I think that really should be looked at, because often there's an oversupply of food on the ferries anyway, so it wouldn't really be a cost as such. So the drivers' meals be included in the fare for HGV drivers, and
This was
on the Sounder Barra.
No, this was on the
regular Barra
the
ferry. Yeah,
long distance one. Yeah,
hauliers get a 50% discount on food already. If they get in touch with their account manager, they can get a card that allows their drivers to get a 50% discount. I understand you're asking for 100% discount. I can feed that back, but the current offering for hauliers is 50%.
Could you send me the details of that, please?
Yeah, I'll make sure that I can get that to you.
That was something I was never told about.
Okay.
Oh,
Were you aware of that?
No, I wasn't aware of that. No.
Yep.
Is that you? Did you want back in, Lewis? Oh, you've got to move on a minute. Yeah. I think Norman's got another question. Be you, Norman?
Well, it's not so much a question. We've all been aware of impending capacity issues because of the renewables projects coming off here. I know the Port Authority. I speak regularly with Alec at the port, and the port commissioned a deal of work with projections for what capacity was going to be required in terms of Arctics coming across. They are obviously going to be pivotal to the future of everything that's going to be happening here, in conjunction with, you know, Caledonia, McBrain, Transport Scotland, etc. They're in the process of putting a new link span in at Deepwater South, talking about that. And I was quite heartened to hear that talks between the port, the Comhairle and Transport Scotland and CMAC are going swimmingly, or going better than they were. There's certainly talks happening, and I think Kenny as well highlighted, you know, we do have this kind of impending capacity opportunity coming up, you know, and it will be an opportunity because there will be a lot of freight on this route. So I was buoyed to hear that the conversations are happening, and that, you know, the government and the ferry operator, as well as the Comhairle, are cognizant of what the potential problems and pitfalls are going to be, and are actively discussing it to mitigate any ongoing issues that may arise. So happily, I think the conversations are becoming more and more productive. So thanks very much for your help along this, because it's been on our burner for a while, and you know, I think the input from all the parties concerned can only be encouraged, so that we don't have a big issue, which it could potentially be. So I'm glad that you guys are talking.
Peter, this is going to be the final question, Lewis. We'll let you away after this.
It is, and thank you. And I don't want to delay you any further. And my point is going to be about the replacement of Lord of the Isles, whatever the procurement process is, to make sure that the delivery of it isn't delayed either. Thank you.
Okay, I know you've got another. Do you want to come in, Paul?
That'd be fine. Yes, thank you for those points, and they've been made in the chamber, basically in Edinburgh as well. So the Cabinet Secretary for Transport, First Minister, and all party representatives were made aware of the current state of play with the Lottie replacement, where we were at with the kind of procurement review, and that an update would be provided after some of the kind of diligence work regarding potential options for direct award have concluded. So there'll be an update there, but it was also well noted that there is the imperative for communities to be served with resilient and replacement vessels, and not at the expense of, how shall I put this delicately, and not get fired. I think the tone was political point scoring, so I'll state that. Yes, thanks. It's well noted. Thank you.
And I did manage 10-15 minutes with the Cabinet Secretary one-to-one last week on this very issue. Yes, so I made sure she had the views of this side of the argument anyway. Yeah. Okay, I think I'm going to leave it at that. And thank you very much, gentlemen, for attending and answering all the varied questions that came in your direction. And hope we'll see you all again. So this hopefully hasn't put you off returning anyway. And David, you have a number of things to take forward as well in terms of, yeah. Okay, thank you. Hope you all manage to get a sandwich for the next meeting. And yeah, if you see Kenny McLeod